Maya Chen had never spoken a word during her 3 years at the Galactic Defense Academy. Not one. The other cadets whispered theories behind her back. Some said she was mute from birth. Others claimed she had taken a vow of silence after losing her family in the Outer Rim attacks. The instructors had long given up trying to get her to participate in verbal discussions, but Maya could fight. Every morning at 0500 hours, while the academy slept, she would slip into the combat simulators. Her fingers would dance across the holographic controls with a precision that bordered on supernatural. Plasma rifles, energy swords, tactical shields. Every weapon known to the 17 species of the Galactic Alliance became an extension of her body. The training computers recorded her scores, but no one bothered to check them. Why would they? She was just the silent girl from Earth, the planet everyone considered the weakest link in the Alliance. Today was different. Commander Thrak, a towering Valdorian with crystalline blue skin and 4 arms, stormed into the simulation bay. His usual calm demeanor had cracked. The emergency alert had been blaring for 6 hours straight. 3 Alliance worlds had gone dark. No communications, no escape pods. Nothing but silence from the Rim territories where the mysterious attackers had struck before. All senior cadets report to Combat Assessment Chamber. 7 immediately. His voice boomed through the Academy's communication system. Maya looked up from her simulator, sweat dripping down her face. She had been running combat scenarios for 4 straight hours, perfecting a new technique that combined Andromedan close-quarter tactics with human unpredictability. The assessment chamber buzzed with nervous energy. 200 of the Academy's best cadets from across the galaxy had assembled. Reptilian saurians towered over insectoid Chitauri. Ethereal Luminians floated beside heavily armored Korgan warriors. And there, in the back corner, stood the humans. 12 of them total, including Maya. They were the smallest group, representing the newest and least respected member of the Alliance. Commander Thrak's 4 hands worked the holographic display, showing real-time footage from the attacked worlds, smoking cities, overturned spacecraft, bodies scattered across once peaceful colonies. The enemy had struck with ruthless efficiency, using weapons and tactics that seemed to counter every known Alliance defense. "We need our best," Thrak announced, his voice heavy with urgency. "The Alliance Council has authorized live combat deployment for the top 50 cadets. You will be humanity's shield against an enemy we do not yet understand." Maya felt her heart race. Live combat. This wasn't a simulation. This was real war against an unknown threat that had already devastated 3 worlds. Around her, cadets began volunteering, eager to prove themselves in actual battle. Voices rose in competition, each alien species boasting about their combat capabilities and warrior traditions. The Saurians spoke of their ancestral hunting instincts. The Korgan cadets flexed their natural armor plating. The Chitauri demonstrated their ability to coordinate through hive-mind connections. Each species had evolved for war in their own way, and they weren't shy about advertising their advantages. Maya remained silent as always, but her hands moved unconsciously, practicing the grip sequences for weapons that existed only in her mind. She had studied every recorded battle in Alliance history. She knew the weaknesses and strengths of every species' fighting style. More importantly, she knew something the others didn't. Sometimes the greatest advantage came from being underestimated. The selection process began immediately. Physical assessments, tactical simulations, psychological evaluations. One by one, cadets were chosen or dismissed. The Valdorians selected their strongest warriors. The Andromedan representatives picked their most strategically minded candidates. The humans watched nervously as their numbers dwindled. Marcus Rodriguez, the closest thing Maya had to a friend, squeezed her shoulder. "Come on, Maya," he whispered. "Show them what you can do. I've seen your simulator scores when you think no one's looking. You're better than all of us combined." But Maya knew that being better wasn't enough. In a galaxy where reputation and vocal confidence determined respect, silence was seen as weakness. Earth's representatives were already being overlooked in favor of more established warrior races. The Alliance had protected humanity for barely a decade, and most species still saw them as primitives who had barely escaped their own planet. As the selection continued, Maya closed her eyes and remembered why she had come to the Academy. The images were burned into her memory. Her home colony on Kepler 442b, the first human settlement beyond Earth's solar system. She had been 16 when the raiders came, Not the current enemy, but pirates who thought human colonies were easy targets. They had been wrong. Maya had fought them off single-handedly, using nothing but mining equipment and a tactical mind that had been shaped by humanity's endless history of warfare. While other species had evolved specialized combat abilities, humans had survived by being adaptable, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless when cornered. The raiders never knew what hit them. That night, as rescue ships arrived, Maya had made a decision. She would join the Alliance military and ensure that no human colony would ever be caught defenseless again. But she would do it her way, quietly, without boasting or ceremony. Let the galaxy underestimate humanity. It would be their mistake. Now, standing in the assessment chamber, Maya watched as the final selections were announced. 49 names were called. 49 voices responded with enthusiastic acceptance speeches. The humans had been passed over entirely, deemed too inexperienced for such a critical mission. Commander Thrak looked around the room one final time. "We need one more," he announced. "Someone willing to serve in a support capacity. Combat logistics, equipment maintenance, perhaps communications relay." It wasn't the assignment anyone wanted. Support roles were for the weak, the unproven, the expendable. Maya stepped forward into the silence that followed, raising her hand without saying a word. The room turned to stare at the small human girl who had never spoken in class, never bragged about her abilities, never demanded attention. Thrak studied her for a long moment. In his crystalline blue eyes, Maya saw something that might have been understanding, or perhaps just resignation. "Very well, Cadet Chen. Report to Transport Bay 7 in 1 hour. Try not to get in the way." As the assembly dispersed, Maya felt the weight of 49 pairs of eyes judging her. The chosen warriors whispered among themselves, already dismissing the silent human who would be serving their meals and cleaning their weapons. They had no idea that they had just invited the most dangerous fighter in the academy to watch their backs. Maya smiled for the first time in months. Soon, the galaxy would learn what humanity was truly capable of. They just didn't know it yet. The transport ship Stellar Convergence hummed through hyperspace toward the contested border regions. Maya sat in the cargo bay, surrounded by crates of ammunition and medical supplies. The 49 chosen warriors had claimed the passenger compartments, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the steady vibration of the ship's engines. She didn't mind the solitude. It gave her time to study the enemy intelligence reports that everyone else had dismissed as incomplete. While the others socialized and boasted about their upcoming battles, Maya pored over tactical data, weapon signatures, and attack patterns. Something was wrong with the official reports. The enemy movements were too precise, too coordinated. They knew exactly where to strike and when. Captain Vex, a battle-scarred Korgan with metallic skin implants, found her 3 hours into the journey. His natural armor plates clicked as he moved, a sound that had intimidated enemies across a dozen worlds. "Human," he grunted, towering over her seated figure. "Make yourself useful. My weapons need maintenance." Maya looked up from her datapad, meeting his gaze without flinching. The Korgan expected submission, the kind of deference that most support personnel showed to combat specialists. Instead, he found himself staring into dark eyes that held no fear, only calculation. After a moment that stretched too long, Maya simply nodded and followed him to the weapons locker. The Korgan's arsenal was impressive. Plasma cannons designed for his four-armed physique, micro-missiles that could punch through starship hull plating, and a gravitational hammer that could crush titanium. But as Maya examined each weapon, she noticed critical flaws in their maintenance. Power couplings were loose. Targeting systems were miscalibrated. The gravitational hammer's containment field had stress fractures that would cause it to explode after 3 uses. Without speaking, Maya began to work. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, adjusting settings and replacing worn components. Captain Vex watched initially with amusement, then with growing attention. The silent human was improving his weapons beyond factory specifications. She was modifying them in ways he had never seen before. "Where did you learn this?" he asked, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier dismissiveness. Maya continued working, installing a new targeting algorithm she had designed herself. The modification would increase the plasma cannon's accuracy by 30% and reduce power consumption by 15%. She finished the installation and looked up at Captain Vex, saying nothing. Word spread quickly through the ship. The quiet human in the cargo bay was performing miracles with their equipment. Warriors who had initially ignored her began bringing their weapons for maintenance. Maya worked on them all: Saurian plasma rifles, Chitauri hive-networked targeting systems, Luminian energy projectors that bent light itself into lethal beams. Each weapon told her a story. The Saurians favored brute force and overwhelming firepower. The Chitauri relied on coordinated strikes and shared targeting data. The Luminians preferred elegant, efficient solutions that conserved energy. Maya absorbed these tactical philosophies, understanding how each species approached warfare. But more importantly, she began to see the weaknesses in their strategies. The Saurians were predictable in their aggression. The Chitauri became confused when separated from their network. The Luminians were vulnerable during the brief charging periods their weapons required. These weren't flaws the species themselves recognized. But Maya saw them clearly. Lieutenant Kresh, a young Valdorian with the same crystalline blue skin as Commander Thrak, was the first to notice that Maya was doing more than just maintenance. "You're analyzing us," he said quietly, catching her alone in the weapons bay. "Studying how we fight." Maya paused in her work on his energy sword, looking up at the tall alien. Lieutenant Kresh was different from the others, more observant, less concerned with maintaining his reputation through constant boasting. His forehands moved gracefully as he spoke, and his multifaceted eyes showed genuine intelligence rather than mere warrior instinct. "I've been watching you," Kresh continued. "You see things the rest of us miss. The way Captain Vex holds his hammer. You adjusted the grip to compensate for his injured shoulder joint, didn't you? The modification you made to Sergeant Thix's rifle. It corrects for the slight tremor she developed after her last battle." Maya nodded slowly. She had indeed noticed these things. Captain Vex had been favoring his left side ever since a training accident 6 months ago. Sergeant Thix, a veteran Chitauri warrior, had developed a barely perceptible nervous tremor that affected her aim. The others were too proud to acknowledge these weaknesses, but Maya had quietly compensated for them. "The question is," Kresh said, sitting down across from her, "what else do you see?" For the first time since boarding the ship, Maya reached for her data pad and showed Lieutenant Kresh the tactical analyses she had been working on. His crystalline features shifted as he processed the information. Detailed breakdowns of each warrior's fighting style, predictive models for various combat scenarios, and most importantly, her preliminary assessment of the enemy they were about to face. "This is remarkable," Kresh whispered, scrolling through pages of analysis. "You've identified tactical patterns that our own intelligence corps missed. How did you—" He stopped, looking at her with new understanding. "You've been preparing for this your entire life, haven't you?" Maya thought about his question. Had she been preparing? She remembered the long nights on Kepler 442b, studying military history while other colonists slept. She recalled her obsession with combat simulations, pushing herself to master fighting techniques from every known species. Most of all, she remembered the promise she had made to herself after the Raider attack. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared. The ship's intercom crackled to life. "All personnel prepare for arrival at Beta Centauri Station. We will be joining the Alliance fleet in 6 hours. Beta Centauri Station was humanity's newest military outpost, established just 2 years ago as a forward base in the disputed territories. It was also the last place the mysterious enemy had been spotted before disappearing into the void between star systems." As the warriors began preparing their gear, Maya made her way to the observation deck. Through the reinforced transparent aluminum, she could see the station growing larger, a massive structure of metal and ceramic, bristling with defensive weapons and docking bays. Dozens of Alliance ships surrounded it, representing the combined military might of 17 different species. But something was wrong. Maya pulled out her data pad and accessed the station's defensive grid specifications. The weapon placements, the shield generators, the patrol routes, they were all standard Alliance configurations. Predictable. Easy to counter if you knew what to look for. The enemy had been studying them. Every attack, every skirmish, every defensive position, it was all being analyzed and cataloged. The Alliance was fighting an enemy that understood their tactics better than they understood themselves. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. The 49 warriors aboard the Stellar Convergence were flying into a trap, and they didn't even know it. Their training, their weapons, their proud warrior traditions, None of it would matter if the enemy could predict their every move. But the enemy hadn't studied humanity. Not really. Earth had only been in the Alliance for a decade, and humans had participated in exactly 0 major military operations. The galaxy saw them as primitives, barely worth consideration. That oversight might be the only advantage they had. As the ship approached the docking bay, Maya began to formulate a plan. She would have to break her silence soon, but not yet. First, she needed to understand exactly what they were facing. The warriors could have their moment of glory when they disembarked. Maya would use the time to gather intelligence and prepare for the real fight that was coming. The transport shuddered as it locked into the station's docking clamps. Through the hull, Maya could hear the sounds of activity: ships launching on patrol, weapons being tested, voices calling out orders in a dozen different languages. Beta Centauri Station was preparing for war. Maya shouldered her equipment pack and followed the warriors toward the airlock. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would discover what happened when you underestimated a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history learning how to survive against impossible odds. The silent cadet was ready to remind the universe why humanity had earned its place among the stars. Beta Centauri Station buzzed with controlled chaos. Maya moved through the corridors like a ghost, carrying supply crates and equipment while the real warriors attended briefings and strategy sessions. No one paid attention to the silent human girl who seemed to be everywhere at once: the armory, the communication center, the tactical planning rooms. They saw only what they expected to see: a support worker doing her job. But Maya was gathering intelligence with surgical precision. In the armory, she discovered that 3 recent patrol ships had returned with unusual weapon damage, clean, precise cuts that didn't match any known Alliance weapon signatures. In the communication center, she overheard fragments of coded transmissions that followed patterns she recognized from ancient Earth military encryption. In the tactical planning rooms, she studied the holographic displays showing enemy attack vectors that revealed a disturbing level of knowledge about Alliance defensive strategies. The picture forming in her mind was terrifying. The enemy wasn't just advanced, they were intimate with Alliance tactics, technology, and weaknesses. Every defense the station could mount had already been analyzed and countered. The 49 elite warriors from the Academy were walking into a slaughter. Lieutenant Kresh found her in the observation lounge 3 hours after their arrival. She was staring out at the patrol formations, her data pad filled with notes and calculations. "You look troubled," he said, settling beside her with his characteristic grace. Maya showed him her analysis without speaking. His crystalline features darkened as he processed the implications. "They know us too well," he whispered. "How is that possible? Our encryption, our tactical doctrines, our weapons specifications, they're all classified at the highest levels." Maya pulled up another file on her datapad, this one showing personnel transfers and communication logs from the past 6 months. She highlighted specific patterns: Alliance officers who had disappeared during routine missions, classified data that had been accessed just before each enemy attack, supply shipments that had been rerouted through channels that no longer existed. "Someone inside," Kresh breathed, understanding immediately. "We have a traitor. Or traitors. They've been feeding information to the enemy for months." The implications were staggering. The Alliance's entire military structure had been compromised. Every base, every fleet, every defensive position was potentially known to the enemy. The war wasn't just going badly. It was already lost before it had begun. "We have to tell someone," Kresh said, reaching for his communicator. Maya caught his arm, shaking her head firmly. If there were traitors within the Alliance command structure, alerting the wrong person could make things worse. They needed proof first, and more importantly, they needed a way to fight back that the enemy wouldn't see coming. The station's alert klaxons began wailing. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors as personnel ran to battle stations. Through the observation windows, Maya could see ships accelerating away from the station, patrol craft responding to a contact at the system's edge. "All Academy cadets report to briefing room 7 immediately," came the announcement over the intercom. "Combat deployment is authorized." "This is not a drill." Maya and Kresh rushed to the briefing room, where they found the other 48 warriors suited up and ready for battle. Admiral Cortex, a massive saurian with scarred hide and predatory eyes, stood before a holographic display showing the tactical situation. Enemy forces have been detected approaching from 3 vectors, the Admiral announced, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. Standard Alliance defensive doctrine will be implemented. First Squadron will engage the primary force here, he gestured to the display, while Second Squadron flanks from this position. Support elements will maintain defensive perimeter around the station. Maya studied the battle plan with growing horror. It was textbook Alliance strategy, predictable, conventional, and exactly what the enemy would expect. The enemy had probably written the counter-tactics months ago. The squadrons would be walking into carefully prepared kill zones. Cadet Chen will remain on station for logistics support, Admiral Cortex continued, barely glancing in Maya's direction. All other cadets will deploy with their assigned squadrons. Launch in 15 minutes. The warriors filed out, their excitement palpable. This was their moment of glory, their chance to prove themselves in real combat. Maya watched them go, knowing she might never see most of them alive again. Lieutenant Kresh paused at the doorway. "I wish you were coming with us," he said quietly. "Your tactical insights could save lives." Maya nodded, but she knew her role wasn't in the front lines, not yet. She had a different kind of battle to fight, one that would require her to remain invisible a little longer. The launch bay was a symphony of organized chaos. Fighter craft screamed out into space while larger cruisers maneuvered into formation. Maya made her way to the station's command center, where she could monitor the battle and continue her real mission, identifying the traitors within their ranks. The enemy appeared on sensors exactly where Maya had predicted they would. 3 fleets perfectly positioned to counter the Alliance's defensive strategy. As the first engagements began, Maya watched the tactical displays with a mixture of professional admiration and growing dread. The enemy wasn't just good, they were flawless. Every Alliance maneuver was anticipated, every tactical innovation was immediately countered. The enemy fighters moved with inhuman precision, as if they had rehearsed this exact battle 1,000 times. "They're using our own tactics against us," Admiral Cortex growled, watching his carefully planned strategy unravel in real time. "How are they predicting our movements so accurately?" Maya could have told him. The enemy had perfect intelligence about Alliance doctrine, because someone was feeding it to them. But revealing what she knew would also reveal how she had obtained the information, and she wasn't ready for that kind of attention. Instead, she began typing on her data pad, working on something that might save the battle. If conventional tactics were compromised, then they needed unconventional ones. She began designing new attack patterns based on principles the Alliance had never used, strategies drawn from humanity's own bloody history of warfare. The battle was going badly. First Squadron had flown into a carefully prepared ambush and was taking heavy casualties. Second Squadron's flanking maneuver had been anticipated and countered before it could develop. Support elements around the station were holding, but barely. "Sir," one of the communications officers called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Lieutenant Kresh. His squadron is requesting immediate tactical support." Maya looked up from her work. Kresh was in trouble, probably separated from his formation and facing overwhelming odds. In a few minutes he would likely be dead, along with the only person on the station who understood the true scope of their predicament. She made a decision that would change everything. Maya stood up from her workstation and walked over to the communications console. The operator, a young Chitauri named Zix, looked up at her in confusion. Maya had never spoken to anyone on the station, never requested anything, never drawn attention to herself. Without a word, Maya placed her hand on the console and began typing. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface, accessing systems she had no official authorization to use. Warning indicators flashed as she bypassed security protocols with codes she shouldn't have known. "What are you doing?" Admiral Cortex demanded, striding over to investigate. Maya continued working, uploading her tactical analysis to the squadron communication networks. New attack patterns flooded the pilots' displays. Unconventional maneuvers that abandoned standard Alliance doctrine in favor of something that looked like organized chaos. "Stop her," Cortex ordered, but Maya had already finished. The effect was immediate. Out in space, Alliance fighters began executing maneuvers that the enemy had never seen before. Instead of coordinated formations, they adopted loose swarm tactics. Instead of predictable attack vectors, they used random approach patterns that constantly shifted. Instead of trying to win through superior firepower, they began winning through pure unpredictability. For the first time since the battle began, enemy formations started taking damage. Their perfect counters became useless when there was no pattern to counter. Their flawless predictions failed when the Alliance stopped following predictable doctrine. Who authorized this change in tactics? Admiral Cortex roared, but he was watching the tactical display with growing amazement. His forces were not just holding, they were winning. Maya finally spoke, her voice clear and steady in the suddenly quiet command center.
Sir, I believe our tactical doctrine has been compromised.
The enemy has detailed knowledge of Alliance strategies and weaknesses. I recommend implementing irregular warfare protocols immediately. Every head in the command center turned to stare at the silent girl who had just broken months of self-imposed silence to save their lives. Admiral Cortex studied her with new interest, his predatory instincts recognizing something dangerous in her calm demeanor. "And you are?" he asked. "Cadet Maya Chen, sir. Academy graduate, combat logistics specialist." She paused, meeting his gaze without flinching. "And the person who's going to help you win this war." The command center erupted in controlled chaos as Admiral Cortex absorbed what Maya had just revealed. The tactical displays showed Alliance forces gaining ground for the first time in the engagement. But the larger implications of her words were far more disturbing than any single battle. "Explain," Cortex demanded, his massive saurian frame looming over Maya's workstation. Maya's fingers danced across the holographic interface, pulling up the intelligence she had gathered during her 3 hours of invisible reconnaissance. Personnel files, communication logs, supply chain records, and tactical data streams appeared in rapid succession. The evidence painted a picture of systematic betrayal that reached deep into the Alliance command structure. "The enemy has detailed knowledge of our encryption protocols, tactical doctrines, and defensive positions," Maya explained, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. "They know our patrol routes, our communication frequencies, and our standard response times. This level of intelligence can only come from inside sources." She highlighted specific data points, classified information that had been accessed just before each enemy attack, supply shipments rerouted through non-existent channels, and communication intercepts that showed impossible knowledge of Alliance strategic plans. "Furthermore," Maya continued, "their attack patterns suggest they've been planning this assault for months. They knew exactly where our forces would be positioned because someone told them our defensive doctrine." Admiral Cortex studied the evidence with growing anger. His species had survived on their homeworld by developing keen instincts for detecting deception, and everything Maya showed him rang true. "Who?" he growled. "Who has access to this level of classified information?" Maya pulled up another display showing the communication network topology for Beta Centauri Station. The access logs show 3 terminals with suspicious activity patterns. All 3 belong to senior staff members with command-level clearance. The implications hit the command center like a physical blow. 3 potential traitors, any one of whom could have compromised their entire defensive strategy. Worse, they were still in the middle of a battle, with no way to know which orders were legitimate and which were feeding information to the enemy. "Sir," Communications Officer Zix called out, "we're receiving new tactical orders from Fleet Command. They want us to redeploy our defensive squadrons to these coordinates." Maya looked at the proposed coordinates and felt her blood run cold. The new positions would leave massive gaps in their defensive perimeter, gaps perfectly positioned for the enemy fleets to exploit. Someone was using the chaos of battle to maneuver Alliance forces into a killing ground. "Belay that order," Admiral Cortex snapped, his tactical instincts overriding protocol. "All squadrons maintain current positions until further notice." "But sir," Zix protested, "these orders come from Admiral Thane himself. Command Authority Level 9. Maya was already working at her terminal, tracing the communication pathways for the suspicious orders. "Sir, Admiral Thane is currently aboard the flagship Destiny's Edge, which is engaged in combat operations near the outer sensor perimeter. The communication lag alone should make real-time tactical orders impossible." The truth was even worse than Maya had suspected. Someone was impersonating senior Alliance officers in real time, using the confusion of battle to issue false orders that would position Alliance forces for maximum destruction. "Sir," Lieutenant Kresch's voice crackled over the emergency communication channel. "This is Kresch requesting immediate assistance. My squadron is taking heavy fire and we've been ordered to break formation. The orders don't make tactical sense. Maya grabbed the communication controls before anyone could stop her. Lieutenant Kresh, this is Maya. Ignore all new tactical orders. Repeat, ignore all new orders. Maintain your current position and execute random evasion patterns. Do not follow standard alliance doctrine. Maya, Kresh's surprise was evident even through the static. What are you doing on command frequency? Saving your life, Maya replied. Trust me. Random patterns only. Make up your own tactics. Around the command center, senior officers stared at the support cadet who had just taken control of their battle communications. Admiral Cortex should have been furious at the breach of protocol, but he was too busy watching the tactical displays to care about hierarchy. Out in space, Lieutenant Kresh's squadron was implementing Maya's advice. Instead of the coordinated maneuvers they had trained for, they were flying like a pack of wildcats, unpredictable, chaotic, and impossible to counter. The enemy formations that had been perfectly positioned to destroy them suddenly found themselves shooting at empty space. It's working, whispered Commander Orcs, a Luminian officer whose ethereal features glowed with excitement. The enemy can't predict movements that have no pattern. Maya was already planning the next phase. If the Alliance was going to win this battle, they needed to do more than just defend randomly. They needed to take the offensive using tactics the enemy had never seen before. Admiral, she said, turning to face Cortex directly, I need command authorization to implement unconventional warfare protocols. You're a logistics cadet, Cortex pointed out, though his tone suggested he was questioning that assessment. I'm a human, Maya replied. My species has been fighting wars for 50,000 years. We've developed tactics that the Alliance has never used because they've never needed to. But right now what you need isn't Alliance doctrine. It's something completely unexpected. The battle hung in the balance. Alliance forces were holding, but barely. The enemy still had numerical superiority and better intelligence. Unless something changed dramatically, the station would fall within the hour. Admiral Cortex made a decision that would echo through Alliance military history. Do it, he ordered. Whatever you need. Full tactical authority. Maya smiled, and for the first time since the battle began, the expression held no warmth. It was the smile of a predator who had just been given permission to hunt. She opened channels to every Alliance ship in the system, overriding normal communication protocols with codes she had memorized from her studies of human military history. When she spoke, her voice carried across dozens of starships, reaching pilots from 17 different species who had never heard tactics like the ones she was about to describe. All Alliance forces, this is Emergency Tactical Command. Abandon standard formation flying immediately. Switch to pack hunting protocols. No predetermined patterns, no coordinated maneuvers. Each pilot is now an independent hunter. Your target is enemy confusion, not enemy destruction. She paused, letting the radical nature of her orders sink in. Then she continued with instructions that would have horrified Alliance military instructors, but made perfect sense to anyone who understood how humans had survived on a world full of predators. Use terrain. Use debris. Use anything that gives you an advantage. If you can't win a fight, don't take it. If you can take a shot without being seen, take it. If the enemy expects you to do something honorable, do something ruthless instead. This is not a test of your courage. It's a test of your ability to survive. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Alliance fighters scattered across the battlefield like a flock of birds attacked by a hawk. But instead of fleeing, they were regrouping into smaller, more agile units that struck without warning and disappeared before the enemy could respond. The enemy's perfect tactical coordination began to break down. Their formations, designed to counter predictable Alliance maneuvers, became vulnerabilities when faced with pilots who refused to follow any pattern. Ships that had been untouchable moments before found themselves isolated and overwhelmed by swarms of fighters that appeared from impossible angles. Status report, Admiral Cortex demanded, hardly believing what he was seeing on the tactical displays. Enemy casualties increasing, reported Commander Orcs. Their formation integrity is collapsing. They're attempting to retreat to their original positions. Maya was already anticipating that move. All units do not pursue retreating enemy forces. Repeat, do not pursue. Take defensive positions and prepare for secondary assault. Why? Admiral Cortex asked. We have them on the run. Because the retreat is fake, Maya explained, pulling up predictive models on her tactical display. They're trying to draw our forces into a prepared ambush site. Standard Alliance doctrine would call for pursuit, which is exactly what they're counting on. The enemy's false retreat confirmed Maya's analysis. When no Alliance forces followed them, they quickly abandoned the maneuver and regrouped for another assault. But now they were facing an opponent who refused to play by the rules they had spent months learning to counter. The battle was far from over, but the momentum had shifted. For the first time since the war began, the Alliance was fighting on its own terms instead of dancing to the enemy's tune. In the command center of Beta Centauri Station, a silent cadet had found her voice and changed the course of an entire war. But Maya knew this was only the beginning. If the Alliance was going to survive, they would need to learn new ways of fighting that went far beyond anything their military academies had ever taught. They would need to learn to fight like humans. The enemy's second assault came exactly as Maya had predicted, but now the Alliance was ready. Instead of meeting them in conventional formation combat, the scattered fighter squadrons implemented hit-and-run tactics that turned the space around Beta Centauri Station into a three-dimensional maze of deadly surprises. Maya watched the battle unfold from the command center, her fingers flying across multiple tactical displays as she coordinated a type of warfare the galaxy had never seen before. Each Alliance pilot was operating independently, but Maya was weaving their individual actions into a larger strategy that appeared chaotic, but was actually precisely orchestrated. Squadron 7, enemy cruiser bearing 27 Mark V is showing damage to its port weapon arrays, she announced over the command frequency. Strike Team Alpha, you have a 15-second window to disable their primary shields. How did you know that? Admiral Cortex asked, watching as a small group of fighters materialized from behind a debris field to strike the exact vulnerable point Maya had identified. Pattern recognition, Maya replied, her attention never leaving the displays. The enemy ships have design characteristics similar to modified Alliance technology. I've been tracking their damage patterns and identifying critical weaknesses. That wasn't entirely true, but it was simpler than explaining that Maya had spent the last hour performing a detailed technical analysis of enemy ship architecture based on weapon discharge patterns, maneuvering characteristics, and structural weak points that she recognized from her exhaustive study of starship design principles. Lieutenant Kresch's voice crackled over the communication system. Maya, this is incredible. We're actually winning engagements against ships twice our size. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But Maya was already shifting her attention to a more serious problem. The immediate battle was going well, but her analysis of enemy communication intercepts was revealing something disturbing. The attacking force wasn't trying to win. They were trying to keep the Alliance forces occupied while something else happened. Admiral, she said, pulling up a new set of displays. I think this attack is a diversion. Cortex studied the tactical situation with growing unease. Explain. Maya highlighted the enemy's deployment patterns and communication signatures. Their fleet composition is wrong for a serious assault. Too many light cruisers, not enough heavy assault craft. They're not fighting to capture the station. They're fighting to keep our attention focused here. She switched to a system-wide sensor display that showed the disposition of Alliance forces throughout the Beta Centauri system. While we've been engaged here, our patrol squadrons have been drawn away from the outer system perimeter. We've created exactly the kind of gap in coverage that would allow a larger force to approach undetected. The implications hit the command center like a cold wind. If Maya was right, the real attack was still coming, and they had inadvertently positioned their forces exactly where the enemy wanted them. Run a full sensor sweep of the outer system, Admiral Cortex ordered. Priority transmission to all patrol units. Report status and position immediately. The results confirmed Maya's worst fears. 3 patrol squadrons were not responding to communications. 2 others reported unusual sensor readings at the edge of their operational areas, but had been ordered to maintain current positions to prevent Alliance forces from reinforcing Beta Centauri Station. Admiral, Communications Officer Zix called out urgently. We're receiving a priority transmission from Deep Space Monitoring Station Epsilon. They're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the void between star systems. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the command center's climate control. The void between star systems was empty space where ships couldn't hide, unless they had technology that the Alliance had never encountered before. Put it on the main display, Cortex ordered. The holographic projector flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional representation of local space. At the edge of the display, barely within sensor range, energy signatures appeared like ghosts materializing from nothingness. Ships, dozens of them emerging from what should have been empty void. Stealth technology, Maya breathed, understanding immediately. They've been hiding out there the entire time, waiting for us to commit our forces to defending the station. The enemy fleet was massive, easily 3 times the size of the force currently engaged around Beta Centauri station. But more disturbing was their approach vector. They weren't heading for the station. They were heading for the inner system, toward the populated worlds that the station was supposed to protect. Estimated time to inner system? Admiral Cortex asked. 4 hours, replied Commander Orcs, her Luminian features pale with concern. They'll reach Kepler Prime before we can redeploy to intercept. Kepler Prime was the crown jewel of human colonization, a garden world with over 50 million inhabitants. If it fell, the psychological impact would shatter human confidence in the Alliance's ability to protect them. Maya was already running calculations, her mind racing through tactical possibilities faster than the computer systems could process them. The immediate battle around the station was nearly won, but redeploying their forces to intercept the real threat would take too long. They needed a different approach. Admiral, she said, her voice cutting through the growing panic in the command center. I need a fast ship and a volunteer crew. Something small enough to avoid detection but fast enough to reach the enemy fleet before they can attack Kepler Prime. What are you planning? Cortex demanded. Maya pulled up a new tactical display showing the projected course of the enemy fleet. The Alliance can't stop them with conventional tactics. They have too much of a head start and too many ships. But they're not expecting a single small vessel to attack them directly. Attack them? Commander Orcs's voice rose in disbelief. With what? A single ship against an entire fleet? Not attack, Maya corrected. Sabotage. If I can get close enough to their command ship, I can upload a virus into their coordination network, turn their own information superiority against them. The plan was insane by Alliance standards, but Maya wasn't thinking like an Alliance officer. She was thinking like a human who had grown up studying the military, history of a species that had survived by being willing to attempt the impossible when conventional approaches failed. The MIDAR coordination virus will corrupt their tactical data. Feeds, she continued, outlining her strategy. Instead of perfect intelligence about Alliance positions and capabilities, they'll receive false information. Their formation flying will become chaotic. Their targeting systems will acquire the wrong targets. Their communication network will carry orders that don't make sense. Admiral Cortex studied the proposal with the calculating gaze of a predator, evaluating potential prey. The odds of success are minimal. The odds of survival are even worse. The odds of losing 50 million civilians if we do nothing are 100%. Maya replied simply. The command center fell silent except for the background hum of tactical displays and communication systems. Every officer present understood the mathematics of the situation. Traditional Alliance tactics couldn't stop the incoming fleet, but a desperate gamble might disrupt them enough to create an opportunity. I'll need Lieutenant Kresh and a crew of volunteers, Maya continued. People who understand that this mission probably won't have a return trip. I volunteer, came Kresh's voice over the communication system. He had been monitoring the command frequency and understood exactly what Maya was proposing. If you're going on a suicide mission to save Kepler Prime, I'm going with you. Other voices began adding themselves to the volunteer list. Pilots who had seen Maya's unconventional tactics save their lives, technical specialists who respected her equipment modifications, and warriors who had come to understand that the silent human might be their best hope for victory. Admiral Cortex studied Maya for a long moment, weighing the impossible choice between a desperate gamble and certain defeat. Finally, he nodded. Take the Aurora's Edge. She's the fastest ship in the fleet and carries the most advanced computer systems. If you're going to attempt the impossible, you might as well do it with the best equipment available. Maya felt a surge of gratitude toward the gruff Saurian admiral, who was giving her the resources to attempt something that violated every principle of safe military planning. Thank you, sir. We'll need 30 minutes to prepare. You have 20, Cortex replied. The enemy fleet will be entering the inner system gravity well soon. If you're going to intercept them, you need to leave now. As Maya headed for the docking bay, she could hear Admiral Cortex issuing orders to prepare for the defense of Beta Centauri Station with reduced forces. The immediate battle was nearly won, but everyone understood that it had been merely the opening act of a much larger conflict the silent cadet was about to attempt, something that would either save millions of lives or become a footnote in the history of humanity's final days in space. Either way, her silence was over. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humans stopped following the rules and started writing their own. The Aurora's edge screamed through hyperspace toward an impossible interception with destiny. Maya sat in the pilot's chair, her hands steady on the controls while Lieutenant Kresh and their volunteer crew of 12 prepared for what they all knew might be their final mission. The ship was a marvel of Alliance engineering, reconnaissance vessel designed for speed and stealth rather than heavy combat. Its hull was composed of adaptive armor that could shift its electromagnetic signature to avoid detection, and its computer cores were powerful enough to crack most known encryption systems. If Maya was going to upload a virus into an enemy fleet's command network, this was the ship to do it with. Approaching the outer system perimeter, announced Pilot Officer Zara, a young Chitauri, whose compound eyes allowed her to process multiple sensor feeds simultaneously. Enemy fleet bearing 37 Mark II. They're maintaining standard formation and heading directly for Kepler Prime. Maya studied the tactical display with growing concern. The enemy fleet was massive. Over 60 ships arranged in a precise formation that maximized their firepower while minimizing their vulnerabilities. At the center of the formation, a single dreadnought served as the command vessel, its massive bulk protected by layers of escorts and screening elements. "They're confident," observed Lieutenant Kresh, his crystalline features reflecting the blue glow of the display screens. No evasive maneuvers, no irregular spacing. They know the Alliance can't deploy enough force to stop them conventionally. Maya nodded, but her attention was focused on something else. The enemy formation was too perfect, too precise. Ships maintaining exact distances, course corrections executed with mechanical precision, communication signals following regular patterns that suggested a high degree of automation. They're networked, she realized, understanding flooding through her like cold water. The entire fleet is operating as a single coordinated entity. That's how they maintain such perfect formation and tactical coordination. "Is that good or bad for our mission?" asked Chief Engineer Tallis, a gruff Korgan whose metallic implants glinted in the ship's lighting. "Both," Maya replied. "A networked fleet is almost impossible to outmaneuver conventionally, but it also means that corrupting the command network will affect every ship simultaneously." She pulled up the virus code she had been developing during their hyperspace journey. It was based on principles she had learned from studying Earth's ancient computer warfare techniques, adapted for the quantum-encrypted systems used by modern starships. "The virus will propagate through their command network like a disease," she explained to the crew. "It won't destroy their ships, but it will corrupt their coordination protocols. Their formation will break apart. Their targeting systems will acquire false targets, and their navigation computers will receive conflicting course instructions." "How do we get close enough to upload it?" Kresh asked. "That dreadnought is surrounded by escort vessels specifically designed to prevent exactly what we're trying to do." Maya had been thinking about that problem since they left Beta Centauri Station. Conventional approach tactics wouldn't work. The escorts would detect and destroy them long before they could reach the command ship. They needed something the enemy wouldn't expect. "We're going to use their own confidence against them," she said, pulling up a new tactical display. "The enemy fleet is operating under the assumption that no Alliance force is capable of threatening them. They're not expecting an attack because they believe they've already won." She highlighted a specific approach vector that would bring them in from the rear of the enemy formation, using the dreadnought's own bulk to mask their approach from the escort vessels. "The key is to appear harmless until the last possible moment," Maya continued. "We'll approach on a trajectory that suggests we're a damaged ship fleeing the battle at Beta Centauri Station. Their sensors will detect us, but they'll classify us as a non-threat. Until we suddenly accelerate and ram their command ship," Kresh said, understanding her plan. "Not ram," Maya corrected. "Board. We're going to dock with the dreadnought and upload the virus directly into their central computer core." The audacity of the plan left the crew speechless. Boarding an enemy dreadnought in the middle of a fleet formation was beyond dangerous. It was theoretically impossible. But Maya wasn't thinking about theoretical limitations. She was thinking about what needed to be done to save 50 million lives, dropping out of hyperspace. "In 30 seconds, announced Pilot Officer. Sir, an enemy fleet is exactly where our calculations predicted." Maya felt the familiar sensation of hyperspace transition as reality reasserted itself. Around the Aurora's edge, through the viewports, she could see the enemy fleet spread across space like a constellation of deadly stars. The dreadnought at its center was a massive construction of dark metal and weapon emplacements, easily 10 times the size of their small ship. "Beginning approach," Zara reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. "Reducing engine output to simulate damage. Broadcasting distress signal on Alliance emergency frequencies." The enemy response was immediate but predictable. Scanner beams swept over the Aurora's edge, analyzing their hull configuration and energy signatures. Maya held her breath as enemy computers evaluated whether their small ship represented a threat to the massive fleet. "They're classifying us as a non-combatant," reported sensor specialist Vex, a Luminian whose ethereal features glowed with concentration. No change in fleet formation or alert status. Maya allowed herself a small smile. The enemy's intelligence superiority was working against them. They knew so much about Alliance capabilities that they couldn't conceive of a single reconnaissance vessel posing any meaningful threat. "Distance to Dreadnought. 50,000 kilometers in closing," Zara announced. Still no hostile response from escort vessels. Maya began the final preparations for their desperate gambit. The virus was loaded into portable data cores that could be uploaded through any standard computer interface. Boarding equipment was ready, including cutting tools that could breach the dreadnought's hull and portable life support systems for the assault team. "Who's coming with me?" Maya asked, knowing that the boarding action would be the most dangerous part of an already suicidal mission. Every hand in the crew compartment rose immediately. Maya felt a surge of emotion that she couldn't quite identify. Gratitude, perhaps, or amazement that these warriors from different worlds were willing to follow a human cadet into almost certain death. "3 volunteers," she said finally. "Lieutenant Kresh, Chief Engineer Tallis, and Specialist Vex. The rest of you will pilot the ship and provide covering fire if we need to escape." "Distance to Dreadnought, 10,000 kilometers," Zara called out. "Enemy sensors are conducting detailed scans. I don't think they're buying our distress signal anymore." Maya could see the problem on the tactical display. Their approach vector was too precise, too controlled for a genuinely damaged ship. Enemy analysis computers were beginning to question whether the Aurora's edge was really as harmless as it appeared. "Change of plans," Maya announced, making a split-second decision that would determine whether their mission succeeded or failed. "We're not going to dock with them. We're going to crash into them." The crew stared at her in shock. Crashing into the dreadnought would mean certain death for everyone aboard the Aurora's edge, but it would also guarantee that the virus reached the enemy command network. "It's the only way to be sure," Maya continued, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what she was proposing. "If we try to dock normally, their defensive systems will destroy us before we can upload the virus. But if we ram them, the physical connection will create a data pathway that can't be severed." Lieutenant Kresh understood immediately. "The virus will upload automatically during the collision. Even if we're all killed, the mission will succeed." Maya nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over her. This was what she had trained for her entire life, even if she hadn't realized it at the time. All those hours in the combat simulators, all those studies of military history, all that preparation for a war she hoped would never come. It had all led to this moment. "All hands, prepare for impact," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We're going to save Kepler Prime, and we're going to remind the galaxy why humanity deserves its place among the stars." The Aurora's edge accelerated toward the enemy dreadnought, carrying 12 volunteers and a virus that would change the course of the war. Maya's hands were steady on the controls as she guided their ship toward its final destination, her silence finally broken in service of something greater than herself. The collision was still moments away, but Maya knew that whatever happened next, the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The silent cadet had found her voice, and she was using it to scream defiance at an enemy that thought victory was assured. The Aurora's edge struck the enemy dreadnought like a spear thrown by the gods themselves. Maya felt the impact as a tremendous crushing force that drove the breath from her lungs. and filled her vision with brilliant white light. Metal screamed against metal as their ship's reinforced prow punched through the dreadnought's hull plating, carrying them deep into the enemy vessel's core. Emergency systems triggered throughout both ships. Atmospheric breach warnings echoed through corridors that had never known the sound of Alliance voices. Fire suppression systems activated, filling compartments with dense clouds of extinguishing foam, and in the milliseconds between impact and the inevitable explosion, Maya's virus found its way into the dreadnought's central computer network. The upload was automatic, triggered by the physical connection between the two ships' data systems. As the Aurora's edge died in a burst of flame and shattered metal, its final gift spread through the enemy fleet like wildfire. Command protocols became confused. Navigation systems began receiving contradictory instructions. Targeting computers started acquiring their own escort vessels instead of Alliance threats. Maya regained consciousness in a corridor filled with acrid smoke and emergency lighting. Her head pounded with a concussion that made thinking difficult, but she was alive. Somehow, impossibly, she had survived the impact that should have killed everyone aboard their ship. "Kresh?" she called out, her voice hoarse from inhaling smoke. "Talus, anyone?" "Here," came Lieutenant Kresh's strained reply from somewhere in the darkness. "Badly hurt but functional. I count 4 survivors from our crew." Maya pulled herself to her feet, fighting waves of dizziness as she assessed their situation. They were inside the enemy dreadnought, surrounded by the wreckage of their own ship and the alien technology they had come to sabotage. Through gaps in the twisted metal, she could see enemy crew members, tall, elegant beings with silver skin and 6 arms, moving with the fluid grace of a species evolved for zero-gravity combat. "The virus?" Maya asked, checking her portable scanner. "Uploading successfully," reported Specialist Vex, her Luminian features pale but determined. "The enemy network is accepting the corrupted data as legitimate command instructions." Through the emergency lighting and smoke, Maya could see the effects beginning to manifest throughout the dreadnought. Control panels flickered with error messages. Communication systems broadcast conflicting orders. Crew members moved with increasing confusion as their carefully coordinated operations fell apart. "We need to get out of here," Chief Engineer Talus said, his Korgan implants sparking from impact damage. "This ship is going to tear itself apart when the crew realizes what's happening." But Maya was already studying the tactical displays visible through the wreckage. The virus was propagating through the fleet network faster than she had dared hope. Ship after ship was falling victim to corrupted coordination protocols. The perfect formation that had seemed unstoppable moments before was dissolving into chaos. "Look," she whispered, pointing to a display showing the fleet's overall status. The enemy ships were turning on each other. Targeting systems compromised by the virus were designating friendly vessels as hostile threats. Navigation computers were plotting collision courses with escort ships. Communication networks were transmitting orders that contradicted each other, creating a cascade of confusion that rippled through the entire fleet. "It's working," Kresh breathed, his crystalline features reflecting the glow of failing enemy systems. "They're destroying themselves." Maya felt a surge of grim satisfaction, but she knew their work wasn't finished. The virus would eventually be detected and purged from the enemy systems. They had created an opportunity, but the Alliance would need to act quickly to take advantage of it. "We need to signal Beta Centauri Station," she said, searching through the wreckage for any functioning communication equipment. "Admiral Cortex needs to know that the enemy fleet is vulnerable." Finding a working transmitter among the debris took precious minutes. By the time Maya managed to establish contact with the Alliance forces, the enemy fleet was in complete disarray. Ships were firing on their own escorts. Navigation systems were sending vessels into uncontrolled spins, and the command dreadnought itself was listing badly as internal systems failed throughout its massive structure. "Admiral Cortex, this is Maya Chen aboard the enemy command vessel," she transmitted, hoping the signal would reach Beta Centauri Station. "The virus upload was successful. Enemy fleet coordination has been completely disrupted. Recommend immediate attack while they're unable to respond effectively." The response came back crackling with static but filled with unmistakable relief. "Maya, this is Admiral Cortex. We're detecting massive chaos in the enemy formation. Alliance forces are moving to engage immediately. What's your status?" Maya looked around at her 3 surviving crew members, trapped in the heart of an enemy ship that was tearing itself apart. "Uncertain, sir. We're alive but surrounded. The dreadnought is experiencing cascading system failures. Hold position if possible, Cortex replied. Alliance forces will reach your location within the hour. Try to stay alive until then. Maya almost smiled at the understated nature of that order. Stay alive while trapped inside an enemy warship that was destroying itself from within. Simple enough. The next hour was the longest of Maya's life. Around them, the dreadnought convulsed with internal explosions as corrupted systems triggered security protocols, emergency procedures, and defensive mechanisms simultaneously. Enemy crew members ran through the corridors in growing panic as their ship became increasingly unpredictable. Through it all, Maya and her surviving crew members huddled in the wreckage of the Aurora's Edge, monitoring the battle through hijacked enemy sensors. The Alliance counterattack was devastating. Ships that had seemed invincible an hour before were now sitting ducks, unable to coordinate their defenses or even identify which vessels were friendly. One by one, the enemy fleet fell to Alliance forces that had seemed hopelessly outmatched. Maya watched as Admiral Cortex's forces swept through the disorganized enemy formation like wolves among sheep, destroying ships that couldn't defend themselves and capturing others that had been disabled by their own corrupted systems. When Alliance Marines finally cut through the dreadnought's hull to reach them, Maya was unconscious again, overcome by smoke inhalation and exhaustion. She woke up 3 days later in the medical bay of Beta Centauri Station, surrounded by reports of the greatest Alliance victory in decades. The enemy fleet had been completely destroyed. Kepler Prime was safe. The mysterious attackers who had seemed unstoppable had been revealed as a species called the Hegemony, an ancient civilization that had been studying Alliance tactics for years, preparing for a war of conquest that they believed they couldn't lose. They had been wrong. You did it, Lieutenant Kresh said, sitting beside her medical bed with his arm in a regeneration cast. The entire galaxy is talking about the human cadet who saved 50 million lives with a computer virus and a suicide run. Maya tried to speak, but her throat was still raw from smoke inhalation. Instead, she reached for the datapad on her bedside table and typed out a question. The war? Over, Kresh replied with a smile. The Hegemony has requested peace negotiations. Apparently, losing their entire invasion fleet in a single battle convinced them that the Alliance wasn't as predictable as they thought. Maya nodded, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with personal glory. The galaxy was safe. Humanity had proven its worth among the stars, and she had finally found her voice not in words, but in actions that spoke louder than any speech. Later, as Maya recovered, she would learn that her tactical innovations had been incorporated into Alliance military doctrine. The unconventional warfare techniques she had developed were being taught at academies across 17 worlds. Her virus design had been analyzed and adapted into new defensive systems that would protect the Alliance from future cyber attacks. But more importantly, humanity's place in the galactic community had changed forever. No longer seen as the weak newcomers who needed protection, humans were now recognized as bringing something unique and valuable to the Alliance, the ability to think outside established patterns and find solutions that others couldn't imagine. The silent cadet had become a symbol of human ingenuity and determination. She had shown the galaxy that sometimes the greatest strength came not from following the rules, but from rewriting them entirely. Maya Chen returned to her studies at the Galactic Defense Academy, but she was no longer silent. She had found her voice in the heat of battle, and she used it to teach others that in a universe full of established powers and ancient civilizations, sometimes the newest member of the community had the most important things to say. The war was over, but Maya's real work was just beginning. She would spend the rest of her career teaching the galaxy that underestimating humanity was a mistake that would never be made again.